The Australian Prime Minister says he has tried to arrange a conversation with the French President Emmanuel Macron, but he has been unsuccessful so far. A week after his cancellation of a major submarine deal sparked a diplomatic row with Paris. Paris has recalled its ambassadors from Canberra and Washington, saying it was blindsided by Australia's decision to build nuclear-powered submarines with the United States and Britain rather than to just stick with its contract for French diesel submarines. France has said its ambassador will be returning to Washington next week. Scott Morrison says he will be patient in rebuilding ties with France.
I understand their disappointment, and that is the way you manage difficult issues. It's a difficult decision. It was a very difficult decision. And of course we had to weigh up what would be the obvious disappointment to France. But at the end of the day, as a government, we have to do what is right for Australia and serve Australia's national security interests. And I will always choose Australia's national security interests first. I welcome the fact that they've had that discussion, and that was discussed between President Biden and I yesterday. So I'm glad that call took place. I'm glad that he was able to reinforce not just from the United States perspective, but from all partners in this new arrangement, that we very much want to see not only France, but all the nations of Europe, our like-minded nations in Europe, playing a very important role in the Indo-Pacific. That's what it means for Australia. And I think it's been very important for the President to have that engagement. I look forward to when the time is right and when the opportunity presents that we will have a similar discussion. But the nature of the issues that we're dealing with are different. Of course, Australia decided not to proceed with a very significant defence contract. And understandably, we know that France is disappointed about that. And I think those issues will take further time to work through than the ones that were being dealt with between the United States and France.
And let's bring in our rights correspondent, ANIL SENGHERA. He's been monitoring events at the UN General Assembly. And he joins us now. ANIL, now let's start with Boris Johnson's speech. How do you think it went down?
Well, Aaron, it was pretty clear. He used almost all his time during that speech at the General Assembly to focus on the climate emergency. And it was a pretty stark warning on the future of the planet. He was basically telling the world, and we heard a little bit there, that it was time for the world to grow up and listen to the scientists. And he kind of identified 4 areas, really, where the world can act on climate. And they are coal, cars, cash, and trees. He was comparing humanity to quote, an impetuous 16-year-old. He said, quote, the 16-year-old, i.e. humanity, is unlocking the drinks cabinet and to engage in sorts of activity that is not only potentially embarrassing, but also terminal. He says that, as a 16-year-old often does, they always believe that someone else will clear up the mess we make. He also threw in a few jokes, as is Johnson's way, claiming the Muppets character Kermit the Frog was wrong when he said it's not easy being green. For those who didn't watch Sesame Street, the Muppets, Kermit was, of course, a green frog. He also threw in references to classical poetry. It's debatable whether that actually hit home with the leaders inside the General Assembly and the watching world. But the big takeaway was, of course, the COP26 summit, which the UK is hosting in just 40 days' time in the Scottish city of Edinburgh. And he said that was a turning point for humanity. This was a call to arms, the COP26, to fellow world leaders ahead of that crucial summit. Now, we did praise China on its pledge to stop building new coal-fired energy plants abroad. He also praised US President Joe Biden on doubling its climate funding to $11.2 billion. Remember, there is a global target of $100 billion to fight climate funding, which is set to be, the target is set to be hit or hope to be hit at COP26 in 40 days' time. This was Boris Johnson really post-Brexit trying to fashion himself as a leader on climate change. His own views on climate change has changed dramatically over the last 4 to 5 years. You could argue that he was a pretty big climate skeptic 4 or 5 years ago, but it seems to have changed his tune Many critics of his government would say that perhaps he needs to look at home rather than preach on the world stage. And some of his climate policies domestically have been open to criticism and not going far enough in terms of tackling climate change.
Meanwhile, it seems that Australia's Prime Minister says he's going to be patient in rebuilding the relationship with France. Does he really have any other choice?
No, Howard, and this is a real example of realpolitik at work. Scott Morrison has tried to reach out to the French President Emmanuel Macron. He's been rebuffed so far. We know that President Macron and President Biden, it seems, are slowly repairing the huge diplomatic row which was sparked by the UK, the US and Australia forming this new military alliance, which led to that cancellation of that huge French submarine deal with Australia, which is set to cost Paris something like $37 billion. And as Scott Morrison said there, or indicated, that it's going to take a long time for the French president, I think, to get over, because it's all about cold, hard cash at the end of the day. Biden and Macron spoke on the phone for about 30 minutes. They've issued a joint statement. They're going to meet in Europe at the end of next month. So as I said, how long can you stay mad at the world's biggest superpower, particularly through an ally? For France, it's about a week. And French President Emmanuel Macron, it seems, has...
Many thanks to you, Anil. That's the much we can take right now. You're still watching Newsday here on the Rise News. Plenty more ahead.